My name is Tigray, and my guest today is Hailu Kebede. Hailu Kebede is the head of the Foreign Affairs Department of Salsay Weyane Party. Salsay Weyane Party is one of the opposition parties based in Tigray. And today I invited him to ask him about what is happening in Tigray now in terms of the attempt by the TPLF to form a transitional arrangement following the Pretoria Agreement. So that is one of the issues that I invited him to talk about. But also, I'm going to ask him about the issue of justice and accountability in Tigray, and especially about a letter that his party, in collaboration with other opposition parties in Tigray, wrote to about 32 ambassadors, I believe, last week. And I would ask him about that, but also about other issues in terms of what the Ethiopian government is trying to achieve by trying to end the mandate of the UN body, and why the Tigray government, or the TPLF rather, has kept quiet in terms of that. And finally, I'm going to ask him about his Europe-wide tour. He just returned to Ethiopia from Europe. He has been canvassing with Ethiopian communities in various European countries. And I am going to ask him about his experience and lessons he might have learned, and his observations and issues around that. And so thank you for joining me today, Hailu.
Thank you, Tigray, for having me. I am honored to be your guest. I hope we will have a good discussion.
It's my pleasure. So maybe I think it would be good if we started from the issue of justice and accountability. And as I mentioned in my introduction, you have written a letter to ambassadors asking them to not help the Ethiopian government end the mandate of the UN body. I think that's the main content of the letter. And I would like to ask you why you felt the need to write a letter to ambassadors, and also what had the response so far been from the people to whom you have written. And also, generally, what is your assessment about the issue of justice and accountability, and what the Ethiopian regime, and maybe in collaboration with the Eritrean regime, is trying to achieve, and why it is that the Tigray government is keeping quiet in the midst of this?
Well, thank you. You have raised a big question. I think, recently we have written a letter, as you were amplifying. We didn't only write this letter this time, but we have been writing such letters over the last 2 years, especially during the critical junctures, I would say. One was when the United Nations team of experts was being established, while the Ethiopian government tried to stop it. Second was, we were demanding, in fact, a UN mandated from the very beginning, because there was some kind of a cooperation with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. We rejected that from the very beginning, and we also rejected the results that has come out from that joint investigation. And then we, advocated for the establishment of this team. In fact, we were also proposing for a project, this genocide that has been committed on the people of Tigray by 2 countries with their allies, is a big, or I would say, one of the brutal crimes that has been committed on humanity. So we have been advocating for the establishment of this team. We have been advocating for the continuation of the mandate of this team. And now, when we look into the activities and the engagements and the rush by the Ethiopian government to, terminate the mandate of this team, we felt it is our obligation. It is also important to, tell the international community, the ambassadors that you were mentioning. In fact, it's an open letter to everyone. So we are demanding to extend the mandate of the team. We are demanding the international community that justice and accountability is the foundation for any future engagements, whether peaceful engagements, whether reconciliation, whether rehabilitation, whether coming together, or whatever political projects, whatever peaceful projects that we and the international community might have in this region. Justice and accountability is the primary agenda. Without justice, there is no peace. Without peace, there is no living together, there is no reconciliation. That's why we wrote this letter. Well, when you look into the reactions, yes, we have found some reactions, but it still needs a lot of engagement, a lot of work, and we are also expecting some of them to reply to our letter. But for example, as Foreign Affairs Department head, also I have engagements with the international community, with the diplomatic community here in Addis. I raise this issue now and then, and I am hopeful that most of at least the Western countries will not help, at least in terminating the mandate of the team. That's my hope. That's what they are trying to assure us in some way or the other. Well, we have to work hard on this. The Ethiopian government is doing its best to stop this. They are on a big project, so we have to work, but this time we have to engage more with the international community. And as you were saying, this time we, the opposition, are alone in Tigray. The TPLF is part and parcel of the Ethiopian government from now on. So either it will choose to be silent, or probably it will start to cooperate with the Ethiopian government to stop the mandate of the committee. So we are alone, but we will stand alone, and we will stand tall, I think, with our community, with the diaspora community especially.
Yes, so you say that you are alone in demanding that there be some semblance of justice and accountability, and I understand why you would say that. And my sense of why the TPLF has been forced, actually, I was going to say chosen, but I think that would be a wrong word. I think the reason it has been forced into silence is because following the agreement in Nairobi, it was told in very, very categorical terms by the US and other forces that it has to play along with the Ethiopian regime, and that there is no any room for maneuver for other things. But I think that is the reason that it has kept quiet at the Ethiopian government attempts to end the mandate. So my belief is that it has been forced into silence. Now, of course, it's a separate argument to say whether or not it should have accepted that sort of demand, given that, again, close to 1 million people have been killed. People from time to time say died, although it was caused by some natural factor, but they have been killed, whether it's directly through the bullet or man-made starvation or other generally man-engendered things. But my question to you now, in terms of the Tigray government, is do you have sympathy for the TPLF in its attempt to play along with the federal government? Because I think if we had a representative from the TPLF now, they would say the reason we are keeping quiet is because we want to give peace a chance. And I think that's also the argument that the Ethiopian government is making now, is that any sort of intervention by UN bodies would jeopardize the peace process. And it looks like that a lot of people from the diplomatic community seem to be buying into that argument, that we should give the two parties to sort out whatever issues there are, and that the UN or other external bodies should kind of desist from interfering in Ethiopia. That seems to be the point that the Ethiopian government is making, and that seems to be the point that various actors in the diplomatic community seem to be supporting. What is your view in that? Do you believe, as you maybe as an individual, but also as a head of a party, that peace could be achieved in Ethiopia by brushing the issue of justice and accountability under the carpet, which is what they are trying to do?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't say that the TPLF was forced to be silent. From the very beginning, in fact, it was the opposite. They were forced to be part of this accountability, question, or the struggle for accountability. When you remember, if you remember well, in June 2021, I think, when they came back to, or when they controlled Maqala, there was a push by the TPLF government that they didn't even want to acknowledge the crimes and the genocide that had been committed. There was a big push from the diaspora, from the opposition political parties, to stand with their community on these issues. So they were forced to acknowledge the crimes that have been committed on our people. So now, when that pressure is relieved, or when they think that they have a room or a way to sneak out of this issue, I think that's they are exploiting it. When you come into your second question about the peace to be given a chance, we have been demanding, and to end this war, we have been demanding that peaceful resolution is the only way out. So we are not against peace. But what I'm saying is, peace cannot be achieved without justice. How? I just can't say. There will not be, permanent peace, or, peace cannot be extended forever without justice. Yes, for now, because there is, I think, an issue of balance of power, or because the Tigrayans, I would say, are defeated. Yes, anything can be imposed on them, but that will create grievances, anger within the society, within the sectors of the society, and that would not help into, a permanent peace in this region. So my argument is, yes, we need peace. Yes, we need to live in a peaceful coexistence, but justice is the basis, or the primary, for peaceful coexistence. That's my argument.
It's a good argument, and it is one with which I agree wholeheartedly. But the reason I said that maybe the TPLF might have been forced into silence is because I do sense a marked difference in their demand from before Pretoria and after Pretoria. Because from before Pretoria, one of the non-negotiable demands they had was that there should be an independent investigation. That they, in every statement that they had issued, in every letter that they had written, they included the issue of justice and accountability as one of the pillars of their demands. But since Pretoria, all of a sudden they have dropped that demand, and that is the reason why I have sort of started to believe that maybe they have been forced into accepting. But I am in no way saying that they are right to accept that. So
I agree with the arguments as well. I'm not saying there is no pressure, or I'm not saying that the Pretoria Agreement did not impose some restrictions on the TPLF. I'm not saying that, but I wouldn't take that argument, especially into Tigray politics, and also I wouldn't agree with some of the arguments, because, for example, the international community, the Western Bloc, for example, are still clear on these accountability issues. As to my understanding and my engagement, international community, especially the Western Bloc, is still demanding for justice and accountability. They are. I didn't see them changing their standards now and then. They have these values, and I think they stand for those values. And I hope they will stand for these values forever, because, as I said earlier, I think justice should be the primary or the basis for peace in this region. And I would ask the international community to stand with us, with our people, and also to stand with Ethiopia even. Ethiopia cannot survive without justice and accountability. So even for the region, for Ethiopia, and for the Tigrayan society, justice and accountability is the primary issue. And so I think this argument or this line of argument should be the governing one in the international community as well.
So you said that justice and accountability should be the basis upon which other things could be built, including peace. And indeed, the Ethiopian regime wouldn't disagree with you in principle. They would say that they believe in justice and accountability, but where they would differ from you, what they would say is that we actually have an internal mechanism to ensure that justice and accountability could be dispensed. We have the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, a body that had the ability and the means to look into alleged violations. And we have the interministerial task force in charge of bringing perpetrators to account. We have set up sort of military courts and civilian courts to prosecute cases. So the argument Ethiopia would put forward, and actually that is the argument that Demeke Mekonnen has been going around making, is we don't need additional support. We have enough in our repertoire to make sure that justice and accountability could be served in Ethiopia and in Tigray, and including in Eritrea, as a matter of fact. But in Eritrea, I mean Eritreans who have allegedly committed crimes in Tigray. That is the argument that the Ethiopian government is presenting to the various stakeholders they are trying to convince. What is your response to that?
Well, I would say for starters, the crimes were committed by Ethiopian government agencies. So other sectors within this agency cannot and they will not have any trust or credibility to demand justice or to held accountable to those who are accountable. It doesn't work like that. First of all, there is no capacity. Second of all, there is no willing. Third of all, a perpetrator cannot investigate himself or herself. This is just basis, legal argument, I would say. We are demanding a big project. For example, I have, for example, my reservations even towards the committee or the team that has been established by the UN. I would demand a big project in Tigray. We have more than 300 massacre sites in Tigray. We have more than 100,000 women raped and gagged. We have destroyed villages, livelihoods, churches, mosques, industries, infrastructures, and so on and so on, which have been destroyed intentionally. So what we are demanding is a huge project with big finance, with international expertise. This is what we are demanding. And in fact, when you go even if you buy the Ethiopian government's argument, how are they going to hold accountable the Eritrean regime? For us, this war has been an international war, and there has to be an international tribunal even to hold accountable to those who perpetrated the crimes in Tigray. So we are saying that a genocide has been committed. Where on earth has a genocide been committed and that the accused would investigate himself or herself? We have never seen such thing in the entire globe. So in the human history, I would say, according to my reading or my understanding, I have never seen such arguments. These are lame arguments. It shouldn't be like this. And this is what we are saying to the international community as well. yes, there are some kind of sovereignty bravado in Ethiopia, but you don't have that moral authority after you have invited a foreign country to slaughter your own people, as they would say, they are their own people, or Tigrayans are part of Ethiopia. You wouldn't invite a foreign force to slaughter your people. So that sovereignty bravado is also useless. It doesn't make sense anymore. So I would say, if the Ethiopian government is genuine or honest to its words that justice and accountability should be there, I would argue with them that let the international community come and investigate, and then we will have a reconciled either neighborhood or a federation that we have been living, that we would probably live if the Tigrayans choose this way. So even to be good neighborhoods, even if we have an independent Tigray nation state, I would ask the Ethiopians to come clean on this. I would ask them, even if genocide has been committed, and even if it is, designed by any authority that has the authority to design such crimes, we cannot remove Tigray or Ethiopia from the region that we are in now. We are going to be neighbors forever, even if we have a statehood. So we at the end of the day, we have to come into reconciliation. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of genuinity. It's a matter of principles to human rights, to accountability, to justice, to healing, rehabilitation, reconciliation, and so on and so on. So this is my argument with the Ethiopian authorities. Allow the international community to come and investigate, because this is beyond Ethiopian institutions' capacity, and there is no credibility in these institutions. We have seen that over the last 2 years, and we have seen, in fact, these institutions were crippled over the last 30 years, and we never had institution prior to that, in fact. So this is my argument, if it helps.
So you say that the UN body should have created a mechanism commensurate to the sheer number of atrocities committed in Tigray and the humongous devastation wrought on Tigray as well. And what we actually now have is a body that is limited in a number of ways, in time, in budget, but also in access. The Ethiopian government has so far managed to deny the UN body any sort of access, and given that the pervasiveness of the atrocities and of the crimes in Tigray, it has knocked the door of everybody in Tigray. You would presumably say that remote, for instance, investigation is never enough, and that the UN body should, for instance, have got access to Tigray, and that the UN should have found a mechanism for pushing the Ethiopian government, for arm twisting the Ethiopian government into allowing the UN body to go into Tigray. So from your interactions with various diplomats, you told me that you have been having some sort of informal discussions with Western diplomats and stuff like that. Why do they say that the UN hasn't really pushed and Western countries haven't really pushed for the Ethiopian government to accept a proper investigation? For instance, the US could have said, and actually I have seen this argument made by an expert on Horn Africa affairs, I think, what's his name, Cameron Hodgson, you know him, he is a commentator on Ethiopian affairs. He said that if the US if the US was really committed to the idea of justice in Ethiopia, it could have told the Ethiopian government, if you don't allow the UN body to go and investigate, we're going to withhold, for instance, AGOA privileges for forever even. But we haven't seen anything of that sort, of course. Everything looks perfunctory, without real conviction, just box ticking exercise. So as someone who follows developments, as someone who is engaged in politics, as a head of a political party, why do you think it is that no country and no international body has shown real interest in pushing the Ethiopian government to do the basic minimum and allow the UN body, for instance?
Yeah, first of all, I agree with what I think you named Camero, said that the US government or the European Union has the leverage in the power to arm twist the Ethiopian government. That's a fact. But these institutions and these entities, the US government and the European Union, have their own interests as well. We shouldn't forget that. They have their own political and geopolitical interests in this region. They have their own economic interests. Especially at this time in our history, they are, in a tough competition with the Chinese, with Russians, with a lot of, international actors here. So, in principle, I was mentioning this earlier. In principle, they have these values that they think would advance them in the international community: human rights, justice, accountability, democratization, and so on and so on. These are Western values that the Western bloc would want to impose, even to some extent, on other societies. And yes, justice and accountability falls into these, principles. So that's why, in principle, they are supporting it. That's why, in principle, they are still trying to extend the mandate of the international body that has been established. But when you come into real politics, they have their own interests. They cannot throw each and every bargain and leverage they have for one issue. This is just for them. This is one issue. Justice and accountability in Tigray. This is one issue. For us, and in fact, even for the Ethiopian government, it should have been a big issue. If they are genuine enough about peace, reconciliation, and living together in harmony, this should have been their main issue. Yes, the Tigrayan society, each and every sector of the Tigrayan society believes so. If they believe that they have been, at the receiving end of everything by these warring parties, the Ethiopian government could be, genuine and, in fact, demand even the establishment of the commission or the establishment of the team, and also, giving access them into Tigray. Actually, access by itself will not be enough. But what I think should be done is there should be a project office in Tigray, and there should be a tribunal somewhere in other African countries. The project office should include, forensic experts, for example, experts on rape survivors, infrastructure experts and engineers, and so on and so on. This has to be a big project. Even for the Ethiopian government, it will bring in some kind of closure into this, disaster, and also it might also help the Ethiopian government to mobilize resources to rebuild Tigray. In fact, it would be part of reconciliation and healing. So, if the Ethiopians think of the Tigrayans as their own, if the Ethiopians think of Tigray as an important political entity in this region and in this country, I think they should see the full length, or they should see the future. What the individuals that are now in power might think that this thing could come to their houses, but they should look beyond that. This is a matter of societies. This is a matter of living together. This is a matter of history. This is a matter of, I think, humanity at the end of the day. So this is what I would say about this.
Hailu, you mentioned Russia and China and explained why they have been supporting the Ethiopian regime. And indeed, they have been risking actually the Ethiopian regime on the international stage. Russia is one of the main reasons why a lot of resolutions haven't passed on Ethiopia because it has veto power, and invariably it stood shoulder to shoulder with the Ethiopian regime. And I think everybody knows why that was. But I think many people listening to this would be wondering if you, as a head of a political party and generally the opposition parties in Tigray, have made any sort of attempt to engage the Russians, for instance, the Russian diplomats in Addis Ababa, to try to convince them of why they shouldn't be supporting a murderous regime, and if you have those sorts of conversations with them, and what are the responses and the impressions that you have from that?
Well, to put it in short, I think the Eastern Bloc, especially the Chinese and the Russians, don't engage with domestic political affairs, and they don't, in fact, engage with opposition political parties. They don't. They work only with those who are in power.
So the door is closed. There is no.
The door is closed for opposition political parties to engage with Chinese and the Russian diplomatic community. That's my understanding. I have tried a lot, especially to the Russians, to contact them, but my effort was futile because, as I am saying, they don't care who is in the opposition or what are the guiding principles that they should engage. They only work with those in power. They have been working with TPLF for the last 30 years. They are working with the current regime in Ethiopia. They have been working with Derg. They have been working with Haile Selassie prior to that. They just work with those in power. Even if a chimpanzee is in the palace, they will work with a chimpanzee. That's my understanding. I don't know if it's offending, but
I think the governing principle is national interest is first, and everything else second. And if they are of the view that covering up for the Ethiopian regime is in their national interest, they are going to readily do that. I think there is no kind of secret in that. What about the various Ethiopian civic societies or organizations? And now I understand why the Ethiopian regime wouldn't want any sort of meaningful investigation to be conducted, because they know that they have committed horrific crimes, and they don't want anything that would implicate them to be done, of course. So it makes sense for the Ethiopian government to try to get in the way of justice and accountability. But what I don't really understand is why almost all Ethiopian civil societies sided with the government. Why is it that they are so keen in lending support to a regime that will one day come and never mind standing for principle, never mind standing for the Tigray people, never mind doing something out of integrity or anything, but from a self-interest point of view? Why is it that the Ethiopian, generally the elite, if you could use that word without being ironic, why is it that they have concluded supporting the regime is in the best interest of Ethiopia? Because if it got away with murder in Tigray, it's going to try to do the same in Amhara and in Oromia and in Addis Ababa. And actually, we could see signs of that. It's now tear gassing people, for instance, who went to celebrate. And this is something that only a regime who knows it could get away with murder would even contemplate of doing. And why is it that it hasn't occurred to various Ethiopians to say justice must be dispensed in some way or form in Tigray?
Well, first of all, there is no independent institution, civic organization, or human rights defending institutions, or intellectuals in fact. There are no independent of such kind. Second is, when you look into Ethiopian history, each and every sector of the society stands by the government, whether forced or willingly. And this war has only two narratives. There is an alternative narrative. Either it's the Tigray narrative or it's going to be the Ethiopian region narrative. And within this Ethiopian region narrative, there are almost each and every sector of the society in the Ethiopian society, whether they are civic organizations, religious institutions, including the Orthodox Church. Well, historically, they have been dominated by the Amharas. So the narrative is the Amhara narrative. Each and every institution that the Amharas own, supported the war on Tigray, supported the war against Tigray. So the rest of the Ethiopian society follows suit because the media, the propaganda, the cultural institutions that this nation has are monopolized by this historically privileged society. So there are only two narratives. Well, I would say the Ethiopian region narrative and the Tigray narrative. And the Eritrean narrative also subscribes to the Ethiopian region narrative. In fact, most of the international community narrative also subscribes to the Ethiopian region narrative. So I don't expect, for political reasons and also for institutional independence reasons, this war is a political war. The only, I would say, new thing is that the tools that has been used or the methodological way of executing this political war is genocidal. That's a new thing, I think, that has come out or surfaced into the international community. Yes, it has been committed 3-4 times over the last 100 plus years on Tigray, but this time we have the digital era, the international community. The globe is now, as they would say, one globe, a globalized world, a digital world. That's the only thing that these crimes surfaced into the international community. This has been committed over the last 100 plus years, more than 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, but I think you raised very important points with respect to narratives, Hailu. I think a discussion should be had among us Tigrayans about whether or not we should have taken, for instance, very, very trenchant narratives, and whether, we shouldn't have tried to reach out to Ethiopians to be conciliatory, for instance, to be the adults in the room. And if we had tried to co-opt Ethiopians to our cause, because we had a righteous cause, I'm not ashamed to say that. And maybe we could have been more, politically savvy and more diplomatically savvy in trying to convince as many people as possible. And I think we should have started with Ethiopians. What happened was that we sensed by and large, Ithiopians were siding with the Abiy regime, and we dismissed Ethiopians, and then the two narratives became irreconcilable. I think that's something that we must have a discussion on sometime by way of self-reflection also, because we have to take lessons from what happened. But I think for now, I'm going to park that at that and return to the issue of justice. So as he said, the Ethiopian government is on a drive to end the mandate of the UN body, and the Tigray government, for one reason or another, has been quiet. And there is a real genuine risk that the mandate could actually be terminated. And what are you trying as political parties and you individually in your conversations with diplomats and whatever else you might be doing behind the scenes? What is it that you think must be done from our side, from the Tigrayan side, and from the political party side to make sure that at the very least the mandate of the UN body is not prematurely terminated?
Well, as for the opposition political parties, as I was also saying this into other medias also, while my engagement with the diaspora over the last 1 month, we are going to be in a very hard position, to come out and, do what we want to do in full heart, in full mind, and in full capacity. We are fighting the TPLF in Tigray. Probably the Ethiopian government will support TPLF in this issue. We don't have an ambition for the Ethiopian government, or we don't have a political fight with the Ethiopian government for the sake of power in Arat Kilo. But we are fighting the TPLF in Tigray, and I think the Ethiopian government will help us. So we have like a two-front struggle that's coming into our doorsteps, into the opposition political parties. So the main forerunner in this struggle for justice and accountability is going to be the diaspora community. Let's be clear on that. The TPLF-led government, whether we call it interim, whether we call it whatever name we might give it, will not help us in this. Yes, we will help. Yes, we will. It will be one of our pillars in this struggle over the coming years, into the coming years, I would say. That writing the letter is one example. This interview itself is one example. We are going to do what we can, but let's be honest. We are going to be limited because a lot of pressure will come in the coming days, months, and years on the opposition political parties in Tigray. The diaspora community, especially the Tigrayan community, the Tigrayan elite, those who can write, those who can speak, those who can engage with the international community, with the diplomatic community, must lead this struggle. We have no other way. So the diaspora community should know that this is its role, its mandate, and its responsibility. We will engage more with the diaspora community, and we will, help in any way we can, and we will do our part in any way we can. But the main the forerunner, I would say, in this struggle is going to be the diaspora community, the intellectuals, the writers, those who can speak, as I said earlier. We need a narrative control. We need articles. We need books. We need the engagement with your governments, with your host country governments, with international institutions, including the UN, the European Union, and other institutions. So I think it has to be clear that this is the main driving force in this struggle, the diaspora community.
So you're making sort of a clarion call to the diaspora community to push for justice. And you're right. I think that the past couple of months there has been some sort of exhaustion and fatigue and lethargy generally among the Tigrayan community. And who is to blame? It's been tough more than two years. But I think we need some sort of reinvigoration in the Tigrayan community and push for justice and accountability as much as we can. So that at the very least, in the future, we won't have any sort of regret. We should be in a position to say, we have tried our best, and whatever wasn't achieved wasn't for lack of effort. So that would be my call as well. And actually, that's one of the main reasons why I personally have taken the issue of justice and accountability as one of my main kind of assignments the past couple of months. And I'm going to try to push, and I hope other people are doing the same. And generally what happens is efforts somehow add up and bear fruit. So I think we have to leave the issue of justice and accountability at that and go to our second topic. Again, lots of things that we could have explored, but then we would be here all day if we try to do that. So we kind of just giving people a glimpse into the various issues hanging around, and then people will make what they will of them. So in terms of, I think we would be remiss if we didn't discuss the drama in Mekelle, and I think drama is the right word to use. I think they're trying to create kind of a charitable interpretation would be to say that they're trying to create a transitional arrangement. I think it's more a puppet arrangement rather than a transitional arrangement, but I shouldn't prejudge. I should listen to what your assessment is of what's happening. But anyway, from social media, from what we could see, what it looks like is that you have been invited to join the conference, to participate, but that you have boycotted because you didn't agree with the process, from my understanding. But now I have you here, so you're going to tell us what's happening. What is the TPLF trying to achieve, and why is it that you boycotted the process? Haven't you made Tigray more vulnerable to enemies? That would be what people would say.
Well, as soon as the preliminary agreement was signed, we have been expressing our concerns. In fact, prior to that, almost 14 months ago, we have issued a document for the transitional arrangement of Tigray. We know we were not in the right direction over the last 2 years. We know what the TPLF is doing will not get us somewhere we want to be. It will not. I mean, it was just a devastating road, I would say. So we were demanding for a transitional arrangement. Actually, what's going on now is not a transitional arrangement, it's an interim arrangement. I think there are differences between transitional and interim, because transitional is going to be big, and it's going to be institutional, it's going to be legal, it's going to have its own charter, and probably constitution at the end of the day. So as soon as the preliminary agreement, we were expressing our concerns that the Tigrayan issues could be undermined, the Tigrayan causes. And well, we were right. After the agreement, the TPLF and its, I would say, political commissars gathered into one room. They have been fighting for almost a month, and they come out with their own solution, that they want to establish a committee to establish an interim government. Well, this committee, to our understanding, is a one-party committee. 3 of them are active TPLF Central Committee members. 3 of them are from the TDF, as they say. Well, TDF now is being disarmed and demobilized. So legally speaking, there was no TDF from the very beginning. When we demanded for a transitional arrangement last year, that was our main argument. Let's legalize TDF so that it can be an institution. The TPLF rejected that proposal. In fact, the TDF generals that they claim they represent TDF now also rejected that. The proposal that would legalize the institutions that they were leading. So they were in support of TPLF. In fact, they come into the television and they threatened us. So these are, for me, political commissars of the TPLF. They were part and parcel of the TPLF prior to the 1995 constitution. And I mentally, I would say nostalgically, they didn't detach themselves from the TPLF. In fact, they claim they are more TPLF than TPLF itself. So 3 of the army generals are TPLF. And then there are these 3 individuals who were handpicked by the so-called government in Tigray. I would say they were handpicked by the TPLF chairman. So they don't represent any institution. And in fact, that's what they told us at the end of the day. They were just handpicked by the TPLF chairman. So there you have 3 active Central Committee members, 3 active political commissars, and 3 handpicked. Well, I don't say they are academicians. I don't know if they are going to be called scholars. Well, they are educated people anyways. At least I know 3 of them have master's degree and above. Probably some of them on their way to have a PhD. So yes, they are educated people, but I don't think they are scholars, academicians, or they don't represent any academic institution or scholastic association. They were just handpicked by the TPLF chairman. So after they were established, they reached out to us. So what they told us is, we are a committee for the establishment of the interim government in Tigray. Okay. We only asked them very few questions, especially on our part. Who are you? Who organized you? On what basis? On what legal basis? Who are you going to be reporting to? These were our questions. So they tried to answer some of our questions, but there was no clarity in the first engagement. So what they did was, the next day they come out to the television, to the medias, and they say that they have started in discussing with societies, political parties, as they are on the way to establish an interim government in Tigray. And they, in fact, said in that press that they are engaging with the political parties, and also no one is going to stop this process. So with some kind of military decree, I would say. And well, our response was clear. We don't know you. We don't know how you are established. We don't acknowledge you as a committee, because this committee, first of all, is a TPLF committee. So if you want to work on the establishment of interim government, let's have an inclusive committee. We are not talking about individuals. Yes, you can be part of the committee as well. We don't care. You can represent TPLF. But what we are saying is, let the other sector of the society, the opposition political parties, civic organizations, religious institutions, and so on and so on, who have been at the receiving end of this genocidal war, be part of this process. And they categorically rejected it. So I think it was like 10 days ago, last Tuesday, I don't know what the date was, probably 26 or 25 February, they again asked for a meeting. Well, we don't say no to a meeting, to any meeting, because we are a political party. Even Tigray, if you come to Mali and if you say that I would like to meet you guys, well, we will come, we will talk to you, because that's our job, that's our duty. We would engage with anyone. So we went, well, some of them asked to meet them in their office. No, we will not come to anyone's office. If you are saying that you are a committee, let's have a ground place, or a middle ground. So we met at a hotel. I was also there because I was in Makala for my party meeting at that time. So we discussed for like 4 or 5 hours, but it was just time, you know. They wouldn't talk about the inclusivity of the process. What they say now and then is trust us. What we are doing is good. What we are doing is good for you as well. What we are doing is good for Tigray, and so on and so on. Look, we are not saying that your intentions are bad. We can't say that. But from our experience, from the last 50 years of political history in Tigray, there will not be good thing coming out of this process unless the process starts with inclusive the structure from the very beginning, from the committee itself. they wouldn't defend the argument, but they just say, trust us, believe us, we are doing good thing. We are, at least we, as the end of our life, we are doing one good thing. We want to have this legacy. Well, to some extent, it became personal. You know, they were talking about their legacy. Well, I don't think a legacy would start with a counterproductive process. That's our argument. As you might have heard, or as might have been part of the engagements with the diaspora community, with the GSTS, with a lot of Tigray sector of the society, this process has been rejected. There were serious questions, there were objections, and they wouldn't listen. That's the culture of the TPLF. They don't listen to any objection from the society. What they do is they decide on their closed room, and then they engage with the society just, to impose their thoughts, their decisions. That's how Stalinist and Marxist-Leninist forces implement their politics. That's the typical Stalinist approach. So that's what they are doing, as I was saying, because they are also political commissars. They have been indoctrinated through these methodologies throughout their childhood. So there was no room to change the process. So what we told them at the end of the day is, look, if there is someone who established the committee, we don't have an issue with you guys. What you have to do is just report what we told you to the one who established it. If some of them believe that there is a government in Tigray, and that government handpicked them, or that government created that committee to establish another government. So some of the argument even does not make sense. And what we told them, whether we call it government, whether we call it chairman of TPLF, or whether we call it whatever name you have, there is an entity that has given you the mandate, to establish the committee. Just report our concerns, our objections, our oppositions into that entity, and then we can talk with that entity. We don't have an issue with you guys. We told them we separate our ways, and well, I think it was last Sunday, they sent us a letter into our party that we should let them know the name of 16 individuals to be part of the conference by midday of Wednesday, according to the local time. So it was like an order. In fact, what we did is we don't acknowledge this committee, and we don't respond to this committee in a written form, because we never acknowledged it, we will never acknowledge it, and we will never acknowledge the outcomes of this process. That's what's happening. Well, they have their own conference, and they are telling us that, well, this process would help, or as you were saying, that Tigray could be vulnerable as a result of our boycott and so on and so on. No, we believe now Tigray politics will have two clear and distinct features, whether you are pro-change or you are against change. Tigray cannot live the way that has been going on for the last 50 years. Tigray cannot be monopolized by a small clique that has monopolized economy, politics, violence. Everything has been monopolized by this clique. And this has to end now, and that's where the opposition political parties stand.
I think the fundamental objection you have in terms of the TPLF is that you as political parties, and I think all the other opposition parties would say the same. You haven't been included from the start, and you haven't been consulted on important matters. And that to the extent that you were invited now, it is for propaganda purposes. It's for to sort of garnish the process, to give the process some sort of spin, to make it more acceptable. I think that's the, and it's a powerful objection, and I think it's a solid argument for boycotting the process. But for someone like me, who's not really invested or interested in party politics, right? The worry that I have, and this would be a worry that lots of people have, is that you generally, as all of you political parties, have failed to see the forest for the tree. You have failed to see the big problem because you are so invested in party politics, in politicking, in the everyday power struggle. And that has put Tigray in a very, very exposed and vulnerable situation. I think that would be what people would be wondering. And do you, sorry, I'm having a bit of an issue with my device, but I'll fix it. But sorry for the interruption. Do you see that do you have some sort of sympathy for that point of view, for people who say that you should have found a way of coming together, you should have found a way of sitting together and ironing out whatever differences you have? And are you not guilty of being kind of standoffish and of not being conciliatory in your approach to the TPLF? If you have found a way of approaching the TPLF that they find palatable, and I think there is a way of speaking to the TPLF that they find acceptable, maybe should he have gone out of your way to find that way? Do you see my point?
I see it loud and clear, and I have sympathy, as you say. I have respect for those who have this, objective argument, because what they are telling us is you politicians should come together and solve our problem. We have more and bigger issues on our society, so you should come together and solve this problem. That's what everybody is saying, and that's in fact what we are also saying. What we are saying is the TPLF is trying to go its own way, like it was doing it for the last 50 years. We will not change anything with the way that they are doing it. We will not change. We have tried our best over the last 3 years since our establishment. For example, in my party, they have been doing whatever they want, and we were being forced or pressured to be part of that process. For example, we can talk about the election. We were fighting inside for weeks, to amend the Tigray constitution, to include decent voices into the parliament in Tigray, and in fact to show some kind of change in Tigray politics, to show the aspiration of the Tigray society to the international community, in fact the rest of the Tigray society as well, because that's what our people also was demanding and aspiring, to have a democratic society, to have an open society, to have a political engagement, and to have decent voices into their chambers, into their councils and parliament. We have tried our best in those, in-room fightings. They lost, for example, in one of the discussions or negotiations, they lost 4-1. And what they told us is, look, the council is in our hands. We can craft or we can declare any proclamation we want. And actually, that's what they did. But we were almost midway into the election in 2020. We couldn't wait. We could have boycotted that election as well. Well, we didn't do it for a lot of reasons. We failed in that election. And look what they did after the election. They sent into our homes, into our office, elderlies and so on, so that we can participate. without vote. It's unheard of in any part of the world, I think. Political parties to be participated or to be engaged without vote in House of Representatives, the Tigray chamber, because they failed to see what we were seeing just a month earlier. It was just only 1 month. And they come up with, disgusting, I would say, solution. And look what happened. We couldn't sell that election to anyone. It was useless. It was the same 100%. Come to the war effort. During the 2021 military adventure, we were cautious, we were objecting. What we are doing will not lead us to what we want. This is not the right direction. They couldn't listen. In fact, the society was also being exploited into that narrative, because we don't have TV stations or organizational structures as they do have. But we have thoughts, we have clear ideas, we have plans. And look what happened to the war effort. We demanded transitional government last year. Look what you can see back what they were saying of the last one. We were being called out for everything that has happened. And now, where are we? We are being forced to establish an interim government in Tigray. And now, even in this process, we are saying you are wrong. This is not the right way to start Tigray anew. This is not the right way. The monopoly that they have over the last 50 years, the thoughts, the indoctrination that they have in their minds is that they decide whatever they think is right, and they impose that decision into society. And we are objecting this because it has brought us into what we are now, in what has happened in Tigray. So I agree with the argument, with the valid arguments that our society is raising, with the arguments that you have raised. But what I'm saying is the interests that you were talking, that the big problems that we have, the big issues that we have, will not be solved with the way we are heading or with the way you were proposing. We are only asking, there is no, for example, an argument on power sharing. We are not demanding any office or any bureau or any title or anything at all. We didn't reach into that level, and I don't think it would be a big problem for us to, for example, I think they have allocated 6 cabinet seats into the opposition. I don't have a problem with the numbers. Yes, we would demand more or we would demand less. It's okay. What we are asking is the process is not inclusive. The agendas that has been discussed in the conference were brought from one line of thought. If we cannot, be part of the agendas, if our ideas cannot be entertained in the conference, what are we there for? As you were saying, just for propaganda, warfare, or whatever we might call it. Our demand, for example, to be part of the committee was, to have our agendas, to have a Tigray-based agendas, to come and discuss on those agendas, and then forward those agendas into the conference for discussions and also for crafting or even approval of the agendas. For the TPLF, as I said, Ideologically, they decide on what they want is good. And they just took those documents for the sake of mere approval into any, whether it's the House of Representatives or whether it's the party congress or the central committee or conference, whatever gatherings they have, they just take such documents for imposition and for approval. And that's what we rejected. That's why we boycotted that process. Because at the end of the day, we are going to be part of the conference, but our ideas and our thoughts and our plans for Tigray will not be part of that agenda. They will not be discussed. And in fact, we are going to be outnumbered. As for example, I was reading this article by someone, I think that Zakan was talking in the conference. He was demanding for the establishment of a council so that we can have better self-determination causes in that council, so that we can engage as much as people we can. Because you cannot engage each and every sector of the society into cabinets, into bureaus, into executive organs. But you can bring as much as people to a council. And that would be a good solution for Tigray as well. That's what they are rejecting. That's what they are not accepting. And as might have heard, Sarkan and his likes were outnumbered in that, because the conference was a setup for the approval of the documents. They were just almost 100% TPLF members. There was no independent, in fact, we don't have an independent institution, right? Especially in the civic organizations and mass associations. That's their own assessment. That's not my assessment. If you remember in 2017, that's what they said. We never allowed them to be independent. We exploited these associations and civic organizations to our political interest. That's their interest. We have crippled independent institutions in Tigray. That's their assessment. So there is no independent institution, because after 2017, there was no new institution in Tigray. There was no new leadership or thoughts or mandates into these institutions. It just kept going on. So that's why we boycotted. I understand the arguments, they are clear and loud, they are good intentions from citizens and from concerned Tigrayans. But our argument is we wouldn't change anything with the way you are proposing or with the way that the setup was conducted. That's answer.
I think that's sorry, I'm having to move my device every now and then, but I hope you could hear me at least. I think it's a fair point of view, and it's a fair stand that you have taken in boycotting the process. If you believe that it's a sham process, if you believe that the output has already been fixed and that the TPLF is trying to give people the false impression that the outcome is a result of people having discussions and debates, when in fact everything has been predetermined. I think the right thing to do for any responsible political party is to abstain and to sort of distance itself from that sort of show, because the last thing we need in Tigray now is a show. So that's a fair point. But I'm just wondering to what degree the exclusion of political parties is. For instance, were you consulted before the Pretoria Agreement, for instance? Did they tell you that they were going to negotiate with the Ethiopian government and that they might end up signing the kind of document that they ended up signing? And even following the Pretoria Agreement, were you consulted in any serious manner? Have they told you that, all right, this is what happened, this is what we want to do, this is the reason why we signed the deal, which on the surface would seem kind of a surrender deal, but again, that's a separate matter. But were you engaged in any serious manner? I think on multiple kind of times you alluded to the fact that you haven't been included, but I'm asking you for you to have a chance to make it very, very explicit.
Well, we were not part of any discussion prior to the Pretoria Agreement or after the Pretoria Agreement. We were not consulted. We were not given any information or any tip, I would say. Yes, they have been promising that they will discuss with the public in general, with the political parties, with different sectors of society in Tigray prior to the agreement. But, well, we know from our history, TPLF will not do that. We know from TPLF's history. We actually, personally, for example, I was not surprised with what they signed, because that's what the diplomatic history of TPLF tells you. Let alone they were in the, I would say, in the losing ground. Even when they have the military might, the military upper hand, for example, into the Eritrea war, they signed a concessional deal. They conceded almost in every point. They conceded their territory. They conceded about compensation. They conceded even in the narrative that the war was started by the Eritrean region. Yes, in some parts of the Algiers agreement, it was mentioned, but the narrative is still there that as if the Eritreans did not start the war. They conceded even the lands and territories that have been awarded to Tigray, which means to Ethiopia at the time. So I was expecting this would happen. That's why we were arguing for almost more than a year that this day will come. Thus, the TPLF is not an institution to be trusted into a diplomatic negotiation, into a negotiation itself. The TPLF is not an institution to be entrusted into the lives and future of Tigray. We cannot entrust them. That's what we were telling. And it breaks my heart sometimes, you know, were there anything like that I could have done more? I would ask myself so many times. Yes, I have been in the media all the time. I have been engaging with a lot of Tigrayans in the diaspora and so on and so on. But I wish I could have done more to create awareness among the Tigrayan society that we are going to end up like what we have ended up now. So we have never been consulted to come, to come back to your question. We have never been consulted. We have never been included in any terms and negotiations into the Pretoria Agreement. And in fact, we were never briefed even after the Pretoria Agreement.
We are where we are, and in one sense, there is no point in wallowing in the past and what could have happened, what should have happened. There are lots of views. I have lots of views, and you have elucidated your views in terms of what you think should have happened before Pretoria, even before that, during the course of the war, and after Pretoria as well. And people have listened to your point of view, and I think lots of people would find it illuminating in terms of what you think as political parties. But we are where we are now, and what do you think it is that we should do as a people and as political parties, and what words of advice do you have to the TPLF in the very, very unlikely chance that they listen?
I don't think I have an advice for the TPLF, because we have been telling them. In fact, our opposition, our objection by itself is an advice. If they take it seriously, our lines of argument into the objections and the oppositions as we are raising now and then, they are an advice. They are a learning lessons for the TPLF. If someone wants to learn, if the TPLF wants to learn, this is what we are saying. This is what we are opposing. In fact, when we are opposing, one thing is we are proposing solutions. For example, last year we have issued a 38-page document. Yesterday we have issued a 20-page document. These are advices. to anyone, in fact, including to the TPLF. These are proposals, these are thoughts, these are ideas, these are plans and strategies, and how we see the outcome would shape our future. So I don't have specific advice for the TPLF. I don't think they will listen as well. But if they want an advice, our documents are there, our objections are there, our propositions are there, our lines of arguments are there. I think they can find it anywhere. To our society, and especially to the diaspora community, is before making any judgments, before doing anything, listen to the different perspectives carefully. We are all Tigrayans after all. If I am saying something, before calling me out or before rejecting my ideas or before counter-arguing, listen carefully to what I'm saying. That's my advice, because if we had an audience over the last 2 years, we could have changed a lot, because the ideas were there, the fears that we had were there, the unforeseen conditions for some have been clear for us. And I think what I advise and I beg to the Tigrayan society, and in fact to the elites, to the diaspora communities, listen to the options that are being presented by the opposition and go through line by line into the lines of arguments, into the writings, into the pressers, everything that we are saying, into our interviews, into our political programs, and so on and so on. That way we can have more productive engagements. That way we can even have more clarified issues, more clarified agendas, because you have your own line of arguments, you have your own line of thoughts. I have, and my party have. I am sure if I am discussing with you, even occasionally, I am sure I will learn a lot from you, and I'm sure the opposite is also true. So this is my advice. Listen to us, listen to what we are saying, and argue on ideas, on agendas, on issues, not on individuals or not even on institutions. We only have to argue and discuss on agendas, on on issues. That's what I would ask to our viewers or to our audience.
Well, I mean, you thrown lots of trust and responsibility and assignment to the Tigrayan community, and I think that's the right approach and attitude to have for a political leader. And perhaps that is the reason why you had Europe-wide tour. You have been meeting with various Tigrayan communities across Europe, I believe. I think you've been to Italy, to the Netherlands, to Sweden, to Germany, I believe. And you'll have had lots of interactions with the Tigrayan community. And what are the lessons that the tour has taught you? What is your experience of discussing Tigray's political problems with the Tigrayan community? It's easy for the community in the diaspora to be a bit out of touch with the reality in Tigray. I think we have a slightly warped understanding of the situation in Tigray. I think the past couple of months, for instance, have given us a window to have a more closer to reality understanding of Tigray from the telephone conversations with our beloved ones in Tigray and stuff. But still, there's always kind of a distance in terms of how much you could understand about the situation in Tigray. So what is your sort of overarching impression from the meetings that you have had with Tigrayan communities?
Well, first of all, it was an eye-opening experience. In our political history in Tigray, the diaspora didn't have the option or the opportunity to listen to what the opposition has to say. This is one thing. And well, it's also the opposite. The opposition did not have, especially such town hall meetings, gatherings, in-person discussions with the diaspora community. This is first of its kind in our political history. So, as it has been an eye-opening experience for me personally, to my party, and I think it was also helpful to the diaspora community in understanding what's going on in Tigray, in understanding my party. Well, some extent, even personally, some might have biases, some might have admirations, some might have different opinions. But when you are discussing in person, when you are in the same room, the mood is totally different. And I think that's one good lesson that I took. So more engagements, more gatherings, more discussions will be held in the future. I think that's the one lesson. When you look into the understanding of the diaspora community and into the describing the Tigray politics, I would say the diaspora is the reflection of the Tigrayan society as it is. I don't see a difference between. That's one good thing, because it seems that we have understanding. It seems that we are highly attached. That it seems that the diaspora is living with us, with the Tigrayans here at home. I think their thoughts and their actions have been with us, with the Tigrayan community. That's a big asset, or a big value that we should be proud of, even. So, but if the political understanding, the political culture is not different from Tigray as well. We have to be brutal and honest on that as well. The accusations, the character assassinations, the defamations, the gossip corridors, everything that's in our society is still in the diaspora. In fact, I was joking in some extent, not only Tigrayans, but the Abyssinians, the Habesha people bring each and every values and cultures with them to the host country, including gossip and character assassinations and backward political engagements. We have to be brutal honest on these issues. For example, let me share you my experience in Stockholm. What happened in Stockholm was, it's the biggest event that I had, but it was also the most challenging, because it was also the starting point. So some of the TPLF hardliners were in fact threatening the youths that were organizing this forum or this gathering, that they are not legal and that they don't have the mandate to hold such gatherings and so on and so on. They wanted to stop the gathering from the very beginning. The youths push hard, and I'm proud of them, by the way. I am so proud of them, because I think they have changed a lot in Tigray political history, because that's the starting point. Stockholm is going to be the starting point. It's going to be mentioned, for example, even in my personal biography, if I have in the future or whatever, in the political history of Tigray. So the youth push hard, and the TPLF hardliners, in fact, came to the gathering. And the first thing they did was, to accuse me of personally a lot of things, disinform the participants in that discussion. Well, I'm not angry, or I'm not disappointed, but it was not important. my personal issue shouldn't have been an agenda to those who have been participating in that meeting. They spent a lot of hours in that room, you know, from waiting hours up to the end of the, probably more than 8 hours they have been there. They didn't go to work. Some of them, they have lost their money, their you know, leisure time, and so on and so on. They to come to that hall and to listen to that, that they can get something out of it. And these people tried to disrupt this thing. Well, we handled it well. I was not personally offended. I would never be offended in any way because I'm a politician and I have to be as tolerant as anyone should be. And well, they tried even to argue on some political ideas, but they couldn't keep up. And that was the impression or first impression that I had in my tour in Europe, and it was a reflection of the Tigray political culture. It was not different. What I thought was, you know, I would expect some arguments, some idea-based arguments, some, you know, challenging questions, and so on and so on. But these people tried to disrupt the meeting itself. And well, the youths there and most of the participants were so civil, they were so disciplined, they were so, well, I would say Tigrayan in their culture. So they were doing good. They have done their very best to, you know, to have this fruitful discussion. And at the end of the day, we had a good night. We had a good and fruitful discussions. And that experience was actually a good lesson to the other gatherings. For example, when you go into Göteborg, or I think in Gothenburg or Oslo, into Amsterdam and Frankfurt, everything changed after that, I think, because well, people talk as well. They discuss, and you know, we have to change the bad experience that we had in Stockholm. But overall, the political issues, the political culture that is in Tigray is active and live in the diaspora as well. And I think we have to change it. In fact, timing helped me a lot, because had it been 6 months earlier or 3-4 months earlier to my visit, I don't think I would enjoy that much participants. I don't think a lot of people would be courageous enough to prepare these gatherings, because some of them invested in their money, some of them invested their time and energy. A lot of people also were at the receiving end of labeling and defamations, because some of them were being accused of as oppositions while they are not opposition. So, well, this is the experience and the impression that I have on the diaspora. But I am so happy that we had those gatherings. I am so proud of our people there. I am so proud of our youth there who are seeking for a political inclusivity, for a political, you know, a very productive and healthy political dialogue. And I'm proud of my generation, I would say.
Yeah, well, I think I suppose I would say that you might take a Tigrayan out of Tigray, but you can't take the Tigrayans out of him. So it's not a surprise to me that you found something that you didn't think were conducive in the way that people conduct themselves politically. But also, I think it's promising that you observed a discernible difference in demeanor in terms of the youth and the kind of the older generation. So a shift must be starting to sort of happen. So that's wonderful. But I think generally the culture of politicians going around and facing the people should be something that we cultivate. I think it's very important. And if I might suggest one sort of improvement to the way we do sort of political interactions, it would be that I think rather than a politician going to venues and making speeches, I think because pretty much almost everybody, for instance, knows what he believes. I think what should happen is a politician should go to public venue and make himself or herself available for questioning. I think that is the one thing that would take the sort of political culture one step forward, I believe. In terms of the accusations and stuff for things that you might have said or done or not said or done, I think even in countries that have a relatively civilized and clean political culture, politicians aren't immune to that. There will always be, slanderous accusations. There will always be people who would say things that you haven't said or done. So I think this is part of the package of being a politician, I believe. So you should, not that you wouldn't know, but you shouldn't be encouraged by those sorts of things. Even I myself might have said, disobliging things about you, but I wouldn't want you to take them personally. It's just the way things are generally. So it's been a wonderful discussion, Hailu, and I'm sure that people are listening to this will find it very, very enlightening and illuminating, as I said before. So thank you for that. But in one sense, I find that the whole conversation odd because you are a politician, a leader of at the very least, a high-profile personality of a political party. But I haven't asked you what your ideology or political philosophy, as far as Tigray is concerned, is. And in a way, it's very, very strange. And if the circumstances were different, that would be the one thing that I would want to ask you. So to just give you an opportunity to cause some sort of offense or controversy and to redeem myself, I'm going to ask you that. And in just 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to tell me what your philosophy or ideology is when it comes to Tigray. What do you believe is or should be, should the place of Tigray be in Ethiopia going forward, if we could move past the current problem, the current hurdle? Would you gravitate towards those who say that we should become independent, or would you gravitate towards those who would say that we should actually remain in Ethiopia in some way, maybe in some kind of more devolved way that some people would argue? What are your beliefs, your political beliefs, and what would the things you would do if you had political power be?
Well, actually, these are a lot of questions, but let me say one thing. After a genocidal war, I don't see the interests of the people of Tigray being respected and served in the Ethiopian framework in any way. That's my party decision. I think that's also my personal belief. My understanding is, politics, and in fact, our party also says this in a lot of documents and pressers. Politics is all about interest. And the interest of the people of Tigray is that's what I'm advancing, or at least what I'm trying to advance. And I don't see the interest of the people of Tigray being respected or served or being dignified within the Ethiopian framework anymore. I just don't see it. So in a way that we framed, I would be leaning into an independent statehood in this region. I'm saying this not only based on the push factors that are happening on our society, but also on our aspirations. I don't think the Ethiopians have now common aspirations. I just don't see it. As you were saying earlier, if we had common aspirations or common pains or common victories, how on earth couldn't have seen a single institution or a single individual demanding for justice and accountability to what happened in Tigray. So I think that's the main reason that I say we don't have common aspirations and common features. When you look into the political economy or into the ideology in Tigray, I think this is a wide range that we can discuss in the future. But for example, we say that we crafted a document that best suits into Tigray society, the political program of our party. We believe we should build an open society, a democratic society. But as we still are part of Ethiopia, we should prioritize on group rights because we are a nation, and a nation should prioritize to be a nation in the first place. So the group rights should be prioritized. Well, sometimes it can be handled equally, but group rights has to be also there as we are part of the Ethiopian Federation. Once, for example, if we have an independent country, I will not be bothered by the Tigrayan group rights. We will have individual rights in Tigray, and I think that would be governing. When you look into the economic aspects, we think mixed political economy is the only way forward for Tigray. Over the last 30 years, the APR, the TPLF were telling us and were imposing their ideas and the thought that agricultural-led policies or industrialization or whatever they might say is the only way forward. I don't think that's the right choice for Tigray. Tigray has rich history and so rich tourism resources. We have rich resources in mineral. We have industrial society that can be easily trained and can have skills in a very short period of time. So that is an input for industrialization. We can have trade as a competitive and comparative advantage in our society. Yes, agriculture has to be also there because we have a lot of people who depend on that, and we have still lands and resources for agriculture. So mixed or balanced economic growth is the way forward. That's my party's stand. When you look into the political and economy, and also we clean into a social justice. We cannot have a welfare state, but we clean into a social justice system, especially of free education and health. So if you have free education and health, I would say you would have a healthy, skilled, and productive society. If you have a healthy and skilled and productive society, that's an asset for profitability, for private sector, for efficient public service. And if we have that, I think we can have a well-functioning and developing and democratic society. That's our idea. And when we look into all these documents, we concluded that because we have to have an ideology, that social democracy best fits into these documents. We are not saying that we have selected social democracy first and then we try to fit the Tigrayan agendas into social democracy, into the international social democracy ideology. What we are saying is we crafted a document that best suits into our society. And when we compare this document into the ideologies that are out there, social democracy best fits into. If we have to choose an ideology, social democracy would be our best fit into those documents. So, well, you can say I'm a social democrat. That's in short. Well, we could discuss a lot more next time on our political programs and so on. I couldn't hear you, Talay.
I was saying you sort of adumbrated your views, and I think lots of people would agree with some of your views and philosophers. Others might quibble with some of the things that you said, but I think what's important is that you are very forthright in your beliefs. And when I asked you, you answered what you believe, and that to me that's a sort of a break from tradition. Because if you ask any of TPLF officials, for instance, what they believe, they wouldn't answer. What they will tell you, well, that's up to the people. Well, I know it's up to the people, but what do you believe? What it is that you're trying to convince the people about? So I think there should be, and it's a good example that you gave me a direct answer, and I think other people should also develop a habit of directly answering what they believe and what it is that they would do if they could have think their way, because that's politics generally. You have beliefs and you try to convince people to come to your kind of fold, and you try to push in a certain direction. But if you don't have any sort of vision, then what it is that you are trying to sell to people. So that's a good tendency to answer things directly. In terms of the independent or staying in Ethiopia debate, I think generally we commit the error of simplifying. I'm not accusing you of anything, but generally in the political discourse, one problem that I observe is we tend to reduce the problem more than we should and kind of simplify things when in fact reality is more ugly and complex. And I do, for instance, from time to time listen to people say that okay, they would go for independence and stuff, but if you ask them how, for instance, you sent that I think I have lost you. Maybe I have lost. I think I had lost you for a brief moment. But anyways, Hailu, I think you're back now.
Yeah, I lost my power and the Wi-Fi.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Never mind. Yeah, I was almost done. Actually, I'm now waffling. So I think. We'll have to finish our discussion at that. It was a wonderful conversation for me, and thank you for taking the time. I would strongly advise that you continue your push for justice and accountability. I think literally you are the only ones who have some sort of currency in demanding and advocating for justice, because making the case as individuals, the case is sort of weakened and watered down. But when it comes from political parties, all of a sudden, it has some sort of thrust and weight. And I strongly urge you as political parties to continue to push for that. But thank you so much for today, Hailu.
Thank you, Talay, for having me. It was a great discussion, I think, and I'm really happy that we discussed on these issues. These are great importance to our society. I think it was an honor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and to our listeners, thank you for listening, and I hope you have learned something. And if you like what we are doing on Tigray, please don't forget to subscribe, to share, and to like, and generally to spread the word around. And thank you for bearing with us. And I have been Tigray, and bye-bye for today.